Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Dark Friday. No, I'm just kidding. Welcome to another episode of Coaches Corner Health. I am one of your co-hosts, Leslie Godet. I'm a mindset and emotional awareness coach for women, and I help my clients achieve self-awareness around their emotional triggers. But I also work with women who are on a mission to make a difference in the world, and I show that they can have a both and attitude and that all they have to do is just develop some minor tweaks to their mindset skills, learn how to manage their emotions, and that will help them to, get things done more efficiently and effectively and still be able to do something that's really important for them and not spending quality time with their loved ones. Andy, over to you.
Yeah, and don't we all need more of that? I'm
Yes, we
glad that you
do.
do that.
Thank
Hello,
you.
everybody. I'm Andy Lidstone. I'm the
Yay.
unconditional coach, and she's light again. Woohoo!
Woohoo!
I'm the unconditional coach. I help people with boundaries. I help people with control issues. I help people really just figure out what it is that they're missing in their lives, what it is they want in their lives, and how to get out of the I don't want this and into the I do want that. So yeah, it's an incredible journey, and we have a show for you today. Um, the difference to continue our series on for teenagers and young people. We're going to talk today about what's the difference between finding your people or finding a tribe or finding the group of people that really fit with you or that you fit with, or being a lone wolf, going it alone, being by yourself and just doing things your own way without worrying about anybody else. What's the difference, and why would you choose either one? And what is it? Why? What is the factors that we use when we decide these things? I'm excited about this one. This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, I think too, it started making me think a little bit as we were getting closer to today that, um, you know, I believe COVID could have played a major part in changing how some people interact with others. So for me, I'm very much a social butterfly, but because of COVID, I found myself, of course, having to socially distance, which part of that was you're not allowed to go out at all, and I
Hmm.
kind of got comfortable
Yeah,
being at home, being at home, even though I was being told to stay in, but being at home nonetheless and not getting out there and meeting people again, especially now that we're able to. And I realize that doesn't fit in with my model, of me moving around and living life. But again, that's still, it's not so much that I don't meet people as I'm out and about and meeting and on the traveling aspect side of it, but when I get to my destination, then what happens? Do I go back into fall into that old mold? So I get it. This is going to be really interesting to see, like as we dig into it.
yeah, yeah, and especially when we're developing our identities, when we're deciding who we are and who we want to be. You know, we've grown up a little bit. We've had our parents guide us a little bit. We've had some experience in life, yet we as teenagers we've hit puberty, or we're just about to hit puberty, or we've been going through some of our life changes. There's some emotions going on, there's some hormones going on, there's a lot of different social things going on, at school, amongst our friends and amongst our family, and there's all kinds of reasons why we might change our minds from time to time, sometimes often, as to whether or not I want to be around people or whether or not I want to be just by myself. And I remember being a young man, um, and being wanting to be around people and not being able to find the people that I could be around. And I remember also sometimes just wanting to stop trying to be around people and just be by myself. And I remember it was often beyond my choice whether or not I got to be alone or around people, because oftentimes, as I've mentioned a few times, there was a lot of people that there wasn't a lot of people who wanted to be around me when I was growing up. I didn't have a lot of friends, and therefore I found myself alone when I didn't want to be often. And yet I still chose that sometimes, even though I was forced to have it other times. So what does it feel like to actually find a tribe? This is something you've talked about in the past too. What does it feel like to actually find your people? What does that actually feel like to you?
Yeah. So from my own perspective, because obviously as I've shared, I really very social, and I had a lot of friends growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've never really found it difficult to meet people, to engage in conversations. But for me, I think the real way for that I can describe for me what it means for finding a tribe is knowing myself, like what makes
Mm-hmm.
me tick, like what are my likes, my dislikes, what are my core values, like what do I stand for? Because for me, that helped me to align myself with people who had similar values, who had similar ideas, and that helped me to build different groupings of people. Now I have friends from decades, like
Mm-hmm.
pretty decades ago, that I'm still friendly with. But again,
Yeah.
they still match that vibe, they still match my values, the people that I'm
Right.
still in contact with. Because as I've gotten used to thinking about this, and trying to recognize what it is really that I want and the people I want in my life, these people that are from decades ago, they still match that. So that's why I'm still friends with them. So I think it really is about who you are as a person, like who you want to be, and like who you are, the values that you have, what you stand for, where you see yourself going in life. Those types of people you can surround yourself with. And it doesn't mean, this is the other part of it, which is I think really equally important, that sometimes people are in your life for, as they would say, a season or a reason.
Yeah.
And so you might have people in your life right now who are there specifically to help you through things. But as you evolve and grow, you could outgrow them. And the
Right.
same thing for those that are there for a season. They're, again, and even in relationships, sometimes people are just not meant to be, but they are there to help you learn from it. You learn from the experience. So that's been my experience around finding a tribe.
Yeah. 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 And I didn't find tribe to fit in with until much later in life. I found, mostly as a teenager, I found the things that I stood for. I found it difficult to find other people who believed in the things that I believed in. Um, and as a teenager, I blamed that on the small towns that I grew up in. That's not to say that I couldn't find what I was looking for in small towns. Just the ones that I lived in they had different values than I had, right? Um, so where I was living, it was the selection of people to choose from was much smaller. The selection of peers to hang out with or to socialize with was much smaller, and therefore I found it difficult to find people amongst them that I related to or that related to me. Um, and
Excuse me.
where um, finding your tribe looked for me um, was really trying to find people who understood what I valued and who valued what I valued. Like you said, sharing your values and and sometimes my values meant more than my social connections. Sometimes my values were important enough that I didn't want to be around other people. If I couldn't find people who shared my values, I didn't want to be around people who had different values.
Right.
And sometimes the wanting to be social overtook my values, and I would just ignore or sacrifice some of those values. So it depends on kind of what stage you're at or where your emotional stability is at, and it depends on your values, and it depends on a number of different factors as to whether or not you want to be around people, whether or not you're able to find those people. Now with the modern world being a little more globally connected, with the internet and social media and video games becoming more and more globally connected.
Mhm.
Um, Kids nowadays have a little bit more options to find their tribe, but that doesn't make it easier. More options doesn't make things easier. I remember my kids having a difficult time finding their tribe as well, and when they did, um, they were very exclusivist as far as they like to hang out with the people who they related to, and kind of avoided the people that they didn't relate to. And that's what I think a lot of teenagers would go through.
Yeah, I think it'd be confusing too because, like you said, there is so much influence now because of the internet, because of social media. There's a lot of influence. So you could be easily influenced into believing that a specific group of people is the group of people that you should be around. And those people can influence you to stay away from certain individuals that might be really a good fit for you, but because you might feel awkward or afraid to actually stand up for what you want. And then again, the flip side to that too is you might just get so turned off that the lone wolf seems like the best option.
Yeah,
And I think my personal belief around life is that we're not meant to go it alone. We are drawn to each other. We are. And I think it's like I give it as an example of when you meet someone for the first time, and you instantly like just connect on a level where you're just
yeah,
sharing things about yourself, and you feel like the hours could fly by and you're having a conversation, and then you realize like this person could be like a best friend, right? So
yeah,
I really think it's, and this is something too that you had touched on way back when we first started this channel, about the cultural differences
yeah,
between people, where you could be with a group of friends and you could meet up with somebody while you're out with your group of friends that they don't get this person, but
right,
you have a connection to them. So I think there's this level of confidence, I think, that is hard to actually, not so much that you can't master it, but I think it's hard to actually decide to do that because we want to feel that we belong. We want to feel included. And so I
yeah,
think that at some point, that's why I think teens could struggle. And I think, even if we think back on our lives, I'm sure there were moments where I struggled as well around this. I'm feeling awkward or not feeling like I belonged, or,
yeah,
what do I do to fit in so I can actually have a circle of friends? And again, like you said, sometimes compromising your own values because you just want to belong.
right, yeah, yeah. And I find that as teenagers, we're still in that stage of trying to figure out who we are. We're still in that stage of trying to create an identity for ourselves, to decide what our values are.
Mhm.
Oftentimes our values change, fluidly. As we grow up, we want different things. As we mature, who we want to hang out with, and what we value, and what things we've been influenced by, and what things and who we influence also changes. So I think one of the key points, that I'd like to bring forth is that there is no right and wrong. There is no correct way. We are a social creature. We are designed and meant to hang out with people, and we are also, um, somewhat of a individual. We're also individuals. We're not machines that like to be in a group, right? We're individuals. So sometimes being alone is what helps us to process our emotions and decide our values, and really create who we are. And sometimes being in a group of people is how we discover who we are, right? I find that in a group of people, or around people that I relate to, I discover what it is that I like when I'm around people. And then I find when I'm having some alone time, or even spending a few weeks alone, I get to really sit back and decide what it is of those things that I discovered when I was around people, I could decide which one of those that, are actually part of who I am and who I want to be, and which of those are just, fads that I've, decided to follow for a while. And and again, those things are evolving, and especially in those teenage years, we tend to change a lot. We tend to evolve a lot. One of the things that I did a lot was to change what I wanted. Like I had I had a lot of people who were trying to help me figure out my social situation because I didn't have a lot of friends. So I had a number of people at different points in my life that were trying to help me figure out how to make friends. And especially the mentors, the authority figures like teachers and youth group leaders and such like that. They struggled because what I wanted changed almost on a daily basis, right? Sometimes I wanted friends, and sometimes I wanted people who treated me well, and sometimes I wanted people who did this, or sometimes I wanted people who did that. I remember taking hunter education, and I remember doing a lot of track and field, and I remember doing a lot of, math specializations, and those are different tribes. Those are different people that hang out in those things. So I had a difficult time trying to find people that I could relate to, and that's because what I wanted changed. And so it is, I believe that's a part of our life where we are transitioning. And I think one of the things that we don't do enough of is we don't acknowledge and understand the transitions we're going through in that stage of our lives, as we're developing, as we're changing from children to adults. That teenage stage is a metamorphosis. It is really where we're deciding who we're going to be. Now, that doesn't mean we don't change our mind afterwards. We do change our mind as adults all the time. It's just that as it's the teenage years that we're deciding what our core values are, what we actually want to stand for.
Mm-hmm.
And some of us don't even get to figure that out until near the end of that period, right? So it is much more of a fluid and an evolving kind of a stage, and that's something that I want people to really recognize, parents especially, is to really recognize that your child isn't the 6-year-old who loved to dance, or the 10-year-old who loved to play soccer, or maybe that's still partly what they are some of the time, and maybe that's what they are all the time, but that doesn't mean that they're always going to be that. And that's one of the things that I want people to understand, is that it's okay to evolve and change. It's okay to want something different. And just because you have a tribe doesn't mean you're going to stay with that tribe forever.
Yeah. I kind of think that we are all of those things that we were in our past, as far as like our likes,
Yes.
the things that that made us to change course to hang out with this group or hang out with that group. Like you said, you were very into other things in your life that made you gravitate to different groups, but within those groups, it still was that awkward stage of trying to figure out, like, okay, are you my people? I think when we can like look at all those pieces of ourselves, like I was into art. I used to model years ago. I love, like, Rush is my favorite band. All of these different people in my life. I love movies. I love to read. I love self-help, self-development, something that I never, if you'd asked me 20 years ago that this is where I would end up, I would have told you that you're crazy. Yeah. However, as I think we write a story. It's like we're continuously rewriting who we are. But I think truly what can help us, and you and I've had this discussion off camera, is that when we start really getting to the core of who we are, like who we are as a person, that's how we show up. So we can be in any group of people and feel like we belong in any group of people. That takes work. It's not easy. And sometimes you're still going to feel awkward. But I know, especially for young people who are like transitioning from, having a lot of structure in their lives with the parents, guiding them to their friends, with their peers, where they feel really comfortable relying on each other to make choices. And then as they get older, then they, some of those restrictions, some of those, some of the things where they weren't allowed to like explore now become open to them. And now they get to decide like who they want to be, because they get asked that question, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? Which is a really, really hard question for anyone to answer. I don't care where you are, at what stage of your life is, but that's a really hard question to answer, because I believe if we are made, or we are being forced to choose a path, then we're not really allowing ourselves to live our lives and really explore life. And so I think when it comes to our younger generation, figuring out which group of people they belong with, I think it's like, where are you at? What stage of life are you at? Because I think, as I said, over your lifetime, you are going to meet thousands of people. I don't even know, the number could be even like, tens of thousands of people. Some of you, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people. And then you think about like, where are you at in each stage of your life? You're not going to know that until you get there. So your tribe of people, you might keep some people. Like I said, I have friends that are decades long friendships. That's a handful. I can count on one hand. Okay. So, but then there's all of the new people that have come into my life, that have come in and gone through, and I no longer am in contact with them. That means they were there for a reason, or just a season, right? They were just part of the growth of me.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what I would encourage parents to, encourage their kids to just, be open to just exploring that, like who you are, like right now, who are you gravitating towards? What are your values? Ask them these questions. They'll be able to tell you. They're not, they are human beings, and they've been learning. So it's not like they won't be able to tell you some sort of answer. And that's where you can either be the parent who says, well, whatever, do it yourself, or you can be the parent who says, okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's see what are your likes. Help them to figure it out, because they don't have the life experience that their parents do, right? The parents have already walked that path and had to figure it out, sometimes the hard way. So
and that's something that we go through. We go through this stage, like you said, all the way through life. We change our values. We change the people we want to hang out with. We change who we are at some level. But there's always those core values, right? Those core things that we had even as children. Whether I want to help people, whether I want to pursue, excellence, or whether I want to, change the world in some way, or whether I want to, serve people in some grand fashion. There is something that is driving us, and as we evolve into different stages, into different social groups, into different stages of our lives, those core values to get realized in different ways, right? And this is the difference between finding a tribe and going alone. Is sometimes the people you've been hanging out with don't really get this thing you've been trying to pursue, and maybe they get something that you've been trying to pursue, but there's something new that you've like a new way that you want to pursue that value. As I was helping people, I realized that sometimes I wanted to help a bunch of people become friends. So I would become the center of a friendship group. I would become the kind of the what is it, the nucleus of a group of friends, and bring them all together, and we would all hang out together. And a lot of these people wouldn't have been friends without them all coming together through this social group. And then sometimes I want to help people who are lost and ignored, and therefore the circle of people I'm hanging out with don't necessarily agree with that. So I'll go off by myself and just help people. And when we're going through those early years of trying to figure out who we are, there is often a conflict between, do I do what I want or do I hang out with the people? And how can I find people who want to do what I want to do? How can I, how can I do that? And at the same time, how do I decide if I want to be alone or not? And one of the
Mhm.
factors that I use when I'm helping people with that discussion, especially young people, is I ask them how much of what you want to do requires a social group,
Mhm.
right? I was talking to one gentleman one time a few years ago now who wanted to have a revolution. He didn't like how our world was run. He didn't like how our governments were run. He didn't like how our society was run. So he wanted to cause a revolution, right? And he wanted to really just cause some massive changes in our world. And one of the things that I helped him to see is whether or not he would need a group of people to do that, and if so, where would he find them? And over time, he decided that he didn't want a group of people; that he just wanted to go through and cause change. He just wanted people um, to change how they think and to realize that there are some things going on that we might not like. So rather than finding a group of people and causing a revolution, he eventually decided on educating people and trying to get the message out there, which is more of a loner thing. Often journalists are people who work alone a lot. They're a part of a team, and they work with a team, but that work is more distant. They do their work, and then they send that work off to someone else to do more work with it, to do the other pieces of it. So it depends on what it is you're doing and what part of your core values you're pursuing at that time, because there's different ways to pursue our values, and sometimes it's more effective to do that all by myself without other people, and sometimes it's more effective to do that in a group of people who share the same value. So it just depends on what it is you're trying to do. And I know that one of the things that we struggle with as teens is, where do I fit and what is most usefully going to help me get what I want? Do I need people for that? Do I not need people for that? And a lot of the times teenagers struggle with wanting people but not being able to find them. And then other teenagers struggle with wanting to do it alone but always having people around. Right? So there's the conflict isn't what I want. The conflict is what I want isn't what I have, and I don't know how to get what I have, what I want. I don't know how to get rid of what I have and get what I want. And that's often the struggle.
Yeah, I just started thinking, and this is something, it kind of relates a little bit to how I work with my clients about having a both and rather than an either or. And I
Mm-hmm.
really believe that there's like different, personality things that are at play here too, right? How you feel around, you know, being in a group of people. Maybe you don't feel comfortable, and that's partly how you feel about yourself.
Right.
So, one of the things that I think is important, which is something that I've adopted for myself, is I don't want to be told who I'm supposed to be and how I'm supposed to live my life. For me, it's like, hey, this is my desire. These are my ideas. Let me talk to people that I know, like, and trust, who can kind of say, hey, yeah, that sounds like a great plan, and then flesh it out with me, or just take me down that journey so I can get to my revealing my answers to myself, whether or not a certain life path is going to work for me or not. I think that's what's the thing that we've talked about before, is how, as young, our kids are younger, and we're engaging with them in their hopes and their dreams. We tell them they can be whatever they want, they can do whatever they want. And then as they get older and start getting into those middle school years, and then getting into high school, getting closer to the end of high school, and then the next transition is either they go straight to college, They take a little bit of time off, or they go straight into the workforce. And in that process, it's no longer you can be whatever you want to be. It's you choose something right now so that you can get focused. But I think the part of I think what's we could make some changes around is, why are we starting so late in the asking, right? Why are we starting so late in asking what they want to do, like right out the bat, and asking them, and then helping them to, work through it, like, how we do with our clients. We work through their problem solving, and we help them to find their solutions. So why can we not do the same thing within our own families, and start talking to our kids from, okay, you want to do this? Okay, what about this really lights you up about? Okay, let's talk about it. Let's continue down the road. They can still be a kid. You can still promote them going out and having fun with their friends and living their life. But I think it's a disservice in a way when all of a sudden they get to high school and you're saying, okay, you're cut off from dreaming. You're not allowed. You can't do that. You got to choose right now. You got to make a decision, a life-changing decision, what you're going to study, if you're going to go to college.
Right.
And instead of like really cultivating that. And that, I think, also then helps them to figure out who their people are, right? Who are my people as I go through life and figuring out this is what I want? Who are my people that I can go together with, that support me on this journey, and helping them through it. So I know this is brand new for a lot of people, self-development. I know it's brand new for them to start thinking about talking to our kids this way. But, I think as adults, we're asking ourselves that question, those questions, what we want. So it would be, I think, amazing that we could start talking to our younger generation, start like encouraging them to talk more openly about those things from a younger age, so that they're not waiting decades later, having gone and spent money through college that they're in debt for something that they absolutely despise.
Right.
And they're unhappy.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and that's just my thoughts, my own personal feelings on that. But
Yeah, I agree. And I think it goes a little bit deeper than that too. It's not just about what career do you want, what job do you want? Do you want to be a fireman, a policeman, an astronaut? It's more about, I think it goes deeper than that. It's more about what interests do you have. One of the things that I loved about homeschooling my children, and we haven't talked about that much, but I loved homeschooling my children because we got to really delve into not just what careers they wanted, but what skills they loved using, what things that they enjoyed doing. We get to really focus on, giving them a general education around most things that you will need, because you need math, you need writing and reading and writing, you need, there are some basic skills you need. You need some basic world knowledge, some basic scientific knowledge. You need all those things. And then with the things that each child excels at, you can take those things and take them a little bit further and help them develop those things that they're actually interested in. And I'm not just talking about if they're interested in science, teach them more science. I'm talking about if they're interested in the science of the cell, help them learn more about, cellular science. If they're interested in writing, truth discovery type articles, then help them write more, truth discovering kinds of things. If they're interested in algebra, but they hate trigonometry, then focus more on the algebra and less on the trigonometry, right? It's about helping them see the things that they like doing, that they're excel at, because that's where their tribe is. That's how they can figure out who it is they like, not just whether or not they're good at math, not just whether or not they're good at, social studies, or whether or not they're good at recess, as a lot of kids profess to be good at. It's about doing the things that are helping them to focus on the things that they excel at, rather than covering their weaknesses and trying to be a little bit good at everything. Because that's where their tribe is. And if they don't find a tribe right now, it's okay. It's also okay to help them learn how to be independent. One of the things that we struggle with in finding a tribe as a teenager is, how do I fit in? We talked about this before, I believe in the last episode. How do we fit in, and how do I just be independent? Well, sometimes being independent means going it alone. Sometimes being independent means stepping out of your social group and walking up to this other person that you've met, or doing this other thing that you're passionate about, and letting those who share that passion come with you, and those that don't, stay behind. And if there isn't somebody who shares that passion, then do it anyway. Like, this is part of what you were saying about standing up for yourself. I think part of what we struggle with is we struggle with the conflict between wanting to have friends and wanting to do what I believe in. And what I think we can do as teenagers is really focus on those areas that I'm good at. Do social things, do extracurricular things, do things outside of the mandatory that are similar to your interests. If you're in regular public school, there is only a limited number of options you can take. Like, you do have to take all the core courses. And even some of the options, there are still some fairly specific requirements that you have to take. And if you're trying to get into university for this career or that career, then there are even more requirements that you have to take. So, but there are still plenty of options outside of those requirements that you can pursue. If you're trying to get into university to become a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer of some sort, there's some fairly high expectations of what you have to achieve. And even if you're trying to get into many of the trades, there's some fairly high expectations of what you have to achieve. However, outside of those expectations, there's plenty of space for exploration, plenty of space for discovery of, these are the things that I'm actually good at. These are the things that I really am passionate about, really do enjoy. And focus on those. Do more of those, because that's where you're going to find those people who you really, really connect with on a deeper level. That's where you're going to find that passion that you can stand up for, no matter what the cost is. And that's where you'll find the courage to go alone, to do things when nobody else is doing them. Just to find that thing or those things that you're interested in. And it's not always about career. Sometimes it is. Like you said, you can do both. You can pursue the career that you've decided you want to get into, even if 10 years after getting out of university, you don't want it anymore. You can decide to pursue that and still also pursue something else, even while you're going through the very hectic and full life of high school or university. You can still go through those things. You can still fill your time up with some of these other interests, some of these more specific and more specialized interests. And that's where your tribe's going to be. As you're going through high school, you're going to find yourself in groups of larger and larger people, more and more people. High schools tend to be bigger than elementary schools, than introductory schools. So there's more kids there. Universities tend to be bigger yet, so there's more people there too. And you just find yourself in bigger and bigger groups of people. Therefore, you're going to be able to find more specialized interests, more specific interests. And one of the greatest experiences about being in high school, and even better about being in university or college, is those special interest groups. The extracurricular activities. I mean, we like our extracurricular activities as kids and young teens, but as we become older, those extracurricular activities become more focused. When you're in dance, when you're 3 or 4 years old, and you continue dance through your 10, 12, 13, 15 years old, it's usually around that 12 or 15 years old that most girls who dance decide they don't like dancing anymore. But there are a few who go on to that high level dancing and who really, really love it. And those ones are the ones who really found that dancing promotes one of those core values that they have. And that's where they find those tribe of other people who actually really enjoy those values. Maybe they're dancers, but maybe there's some other kind of an artist, or maybe there's some other kind of an interest, but it still shares those core values. And then as you get into university, you tend to specialize even more. And that's what I want to talk about is those interests that are not specifically career related, because that's where you discover a little bit more about yourself. Like you said, we can do both. So let's have a bit of both. Let's have that career mindset and that social mindset.
Yeah. But I also too believe that you don't have to just have one specific tribe of people.
Right.
Because I have friends of mine, again, even though they're decades, there are different places in my life. Even the newer friends, they're just a different part of who I am. So I have those interests with them. They still align with me and my values, but they're just different interests. So I don't believe you have to just have one specific type of person in your life as part of your tribe, but I believe you can have different groupings based on what you need that person for. Whether it's a friendship, whether it's a friendship in different areas, supporting you in your business, supporting you, maybe maybe you have an interest, a hobby, and you have a tribe of people in that. Like, but you can still have different tribes. But I think for all sakes and purposes of this particular call, I think, or this particular talk, it's not about having all of those other people. I think it's about having that core.
Yes.
Because that core tribe of people are the ones that you would call in the middle of the night when you have something that, you are like, you need someone to talk to. Do you have that? And I think when we can actually start letting our kids know that it's okay to lean on each other. You don't have to. I think part of it too comes with, you want them to have competitions for specific things, but you also don't want them to always be competitive in all areas of their life. If that makes sense, I mean, like, you don't want them always competing, even in friendships, because then you're not really building anything which you want to build. But yeah, I was just thinking about that you can have different groupings of people who really, fit the model of your ideals, your similar interests, your values. But they maybe fit the mold of, like you were saying, you are a person who is going to college or university, and it's around a specific thing. That's your people. And then you've got your friends back home where you've got this like really deep connection from growing up and from the experiences of growing up as you've developed in all of the things that, life in general. Maybe that's your core. But also, the one thing I've found is that my core includes people that I've only recently known for a few short years.
Yeah.
So your core doesn't have to be those people that you grew up with, that you brought with you. It can be, who you choose. But I think that's what I think that I like to talk about that core, because I think that is I think that's really important, is to have that real core, and knowing that it doesn't have to be people from your past. It can be people that you've just, only started creating. It's like, where are you at in life? And I think that's because a lot of us, just so you know, if you're watching this and you're a young person, those of us who've already gone through a few decades, we've started asking that question, like, who am I? What do I want for my life? We started asking it now because we realized at some point we were made to decide our life already, like plan it out right now. And now we're asking that question. So yeah, that's what I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, and I like what you were saying a few minutes ago about about not sticking to one tribe, like one group of people, one identity, one thought pattern. They change. We have many, like I mentioned, I was into track and field, I was into hunter education, and I was into math, and I had opportunities to hang out with different people in each group. And what I struggled with is trying to find people that were in all three groups. Well, those are some pretty diverse groups. I mean, those ones don't, there's not a lot of common values in those. So I had difficulty finding people who would share all of my values. And I think that's what I was what I was struggling with when I was growing up. When I like what you said about sometimes we have different friends for different reasons. Like I could have had hunter education friends, and I could have had track and field friends, and I could have had, math friends. And maybe some of them didn't understand each other. Maybe the math people didn't like the hunter education people, and vice versa. That's okay. I don't have to take all of my friends to all of my social groups. I can have different friends for different reasons and in different situations. And I can have all of that depending on who I am. And at the same time, so can each of my friends have different interests that I don't necessarily agree with, or interests that I don't necessarily share with them. So I can have people who I play Dungeons and Dragons with, who also do a bunch of other stuff I don't necessarily like. I can have people that I get on coaching conversations and have these wonderful, beautiful growth conversations with, who don't share some of my other values, right? Who don't play video games with me 20 hours a day. Why don't you do that, Leslie? Right? We can do that.
I don't know. That's a good question.
But that's what I'm getting at. This is something that I wish I would have told younger me, is that you can have different friends for different purposes. You can be parts of different tribes. You don't have to have one. And sometimes it's still okay to be by ourselves. Sometimes when we're feeling like we're sacrificing or losing ourselves, sacrificing our values or losing ourselves in our friendships, that's when it's a good time to spend a few days, a few weeks, even a few months, just trying to sit by myself, trying to figure out which of those things I actually like and which ones I like, so I can have friends. Right? Sometimes being alone is good. It's just not, like you were saying earlier, it's not, I don't think it's part of our genetics to be alone all the time. I think we are a social creature, and therefore being around people is something that we do crave. However, if that's the only goal we pursue, we can lose ourselves in that. So there is some value in going alone for a while too, to really figure out who we are.
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with having alone time. I feel very comfortable at times where I'll curl up and I'll read a book, or I'll watch a movie, because I'm married, for over 26 years, but we don't share all the same interests as far as when it comes to movies. Like, I'm a movie geek, so I'll watch everything except pretty much the gory ones. I'm really not into seeing people, having their guts taken out. I'm not really into those ones, but I love like all the sci-fi and the fantasies and the rom-coms and the action and the drama and the period pieces. I mean, I love these things. The superheroes, the Marvels and all of that. I geek out. And when we lived in Florida, we lived there for 12 years. I remember going to the movies and do 2 movies in the same day, because I was like excited, like something came out. I remember going to see a movie Friday night. And, I said, hey, do you mind if I go? No, because I've been dying to see the movie. And the next day I'd go see it again, because that was me. So you can do things alone, but I think that's healthy. But I also know that we're meant to be together. Like, I really truly do. And we're not meant to go through life alone, like by ourselves, because it can be very lonely. In fact, I'll give you an example. You watch anybody who I've seen some people who are homeless, and I watch them, not because I'm not looking at them with pity. I'm not looking at them, with disdain. What I notice though is I can tell they crave connection when they're speaking to themselves. They're having conversations because they have no one to talk to. And so when you see that, you realize, if you see somebody walking down the street and they're talking to themselves, you might think, oh, they're crazy, but it could really be that they've been alone far too long, have needed someone to talk to, and they just decided the only way is to start talking to themselves.
Yeah.
And so that to me that really, like, when I saw this happening on more than one occasion, when I would come across someone who it looked like they'd been living out on their own for quite a long time on the streets, I realized, we are craving connection, and I could tell just by, you'd have a conversation with them, and it was like they'd soak up whatever it is that you were saying, even if it didn't matter, because they just wanted someone to talk to. So I really truly believe that being individual is fantastic because you want to be your own person.
I agree.
But I also think that, and finding your tribe, you don't have to have one, you can have multiple, and you'll have probably multiple over your lifetimes. And again, as I said before, sometimes people come into your life, they're there for just a short period of time. And it's because you may have outgrown them, or they've outgrown you, or it's just you just don't have the same interests anymore. And sometimes they're there for a reason, because you're going through a tough time in your life and you need that support. But then when you get that support and you've gotten strong, maybe that friendship isn't really the friendship, or you just lose touch, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I think what my message is like, don't make it wrong that you don't really know who your people are.
Right.
Because you will figure that out over your lifetime. I'm still figuring it out, and I'm 59. So I'm just letting you know, I'm putting it out there. Yes, I'm 59 years old. I'm going to be 60 in February, and I'm fine with that. But I'm so happy that I've really opened myself up to having different people in my life, but while still pursuing my own individuality.
Yeah. First of all, there's no damn way you're 59 years old. That's just not cool. Second of all, there isn't a right way to do this. I think that is the message we're coming to, is there is no one tribe. It's not bad to be alone. It's not bad to be in a group. You might find your tribe. You might not find a tribe. You might choose to be alone. You might choose to be around people. And those things are going to change a lot throughout the course of your life. And that's okay. That's actually a good thing. And part of going it alone isn't actually being alone. It's being brave enough to hop from tribe to tribe to tribe, to have a number of different circles that you hang out with, and that you're the only one that's common amongst all of them. And that's so you're not necessarily alone, but you're the only person who shares all of those interests. There isn't somebody else who shares all of those interests, right? And that's something that I was trying to do as a teenager, is I was trying to find people who shared all of my interests. And this is one of the things that we were talking about, is it's okay to have different tribes for different reasons, for different purposes, for different values. It's okay to have different social groups, and it's okay that they don't share each other's interests. It's okay that maybe you're the only common thread, and that's okay too. And sometimes, you want to be by yourself. It's okay. Like, I love to go driving, and sometimes I love to go driving by myself for days at a time, just to go experience the countryside and meet new people at coffee shops and truck stops and things, and just hang out for the hour that I'm in a restaurant with somebody, and that's it. And I like that. But that isn't being alone in that same way that you were talking about with homeless people, where they're lonely. It's being alone in that I'm going from social situation to social situation, and I'm the only common thread. There isn't a right way. There isn't one identity. You're not stuck in the decisions you make as a teenager. You're not stuck as a teenager. You're not stuck in the decisions that you made or that were made for you as a child. You get to evolve. You get to change. You get to move on. And this is part of the important evolution of the stage you're going through as a teenager, is to find tribes that you relate to, find ones that you don't want to relate to, figure out which ones you want to belong in or which ones you don't want to belong in, and how to navigate between them all. You don't need to have one or two or three people who are a part of all of them. You can have different friends for different reasons, for different seasons, right? You can have different different people for all the different things. And like you said, sometimes they're long-term friends that you have for decades, and sometimes your best friend is somebody you met 3 weeks ago. And that's great.
Yeah. Like, as an example, I met Andy a couple of years ago, and he did a call to action on Facebook looking for coaches who wanted to just connect and, build a community where we support each other. And we just built this friendship over the past couple of years. And then we had an interview within my women's Facebook group, and it was about relationships. I wanted to bring a male's perspective to the women around a specific topic. And it was like magic, like a light bulb moment for me. And I thought, this friendship we get each other. And I reached out to him and I asked him if he wanted to, do a YouTube channel together. And it's just been, ever since then, we've been doing this. But then on top of that, we've also created other groups where we collaborate on. And I think it's really an amazing experience, and watching our relationship over the past couple of years, how it's evolved and gotten even better. But we've never met in person, just so you know. We've never met in person, and yet we have a really deep connection. So it's finding your people can be done online. Yes, of course. So yes, we're individually coming together as a pair of people who we really get each other, and we decided to do this together, but we've never met.
Yep.
And so to me, it's like that's the beauty of finding your people, is just being open that it can happen anywhere at any time in any situation. Yes. Doesn't have to be because you meet them through your friends or through people that you know. You can meet them if you put yourself out there, which is probably one of the reasons why like I said, I've always been social. And so when I first started getting into this self-development, the way for me, I think, to really come out of my shell, especially online and especially with the lifestyle that I'm living, was to just go online, look for groups that are networking. And this is when I first moved to Vegas, and I just went and met people on my own. I did it by myself. Yep. So that's okay to do that by yourself. And then I grew some really great friendships from that. I got some really good friendships. So it can be done anyway. It doesn't have to be, it can be done anywhere. It can be done any time in your life. Like I was in my mid-50s. So it can be done at any time of your life, and you could evolve into someone completely different. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the people you hang around with now may not really fit your lifestyle anymore. It doesn't mean you don't like them. It doesn't mean that you don't care about them, but your interests might change. So to me, it's like that decision to find your tribe, and that it has to be, it's almost like that sounds like you have to do it now and it can't change. It's like set. That's not what we're saying. We're saying,
no, not at all.
Be yourself, go out and live your life, find who you feel good around, that makes you feel good about yourself, that you share similar values, and be open that you can change your mind to
a lot.
Is in your circle. Yeah, and that's okay. I think it's awesome. It's okay.
It's all good. Yeah. Yeah, and there's so much to this conversation. I love this conversation. I knew it was going to be a good one, and I thank you for paying attention. I thank you, Leslie, for participating in the conversation with me. This has been a great one, and I look forward to the next one we do next week. I don't even know what that is yet, but we'll figure it out. We'll let you know.
Yeah, that's the fun part about this. I kind of like that we're going with the flow of this and just figuring it out as we go, because I think that it's not like we have to, it would almost feel like it's scripted, I think, for both of us, if we had everything set in stone. We have an outline. So just so you know, we have an outline.
We do have an outline. it's
We are
there's
figuring
basic
it out.
concepts there.
Exactly. We just want to make sure that when we go live, that we're bringing a flow that makes sense, that kind of leads from one to the next. And we weren't doing that before, but we decided to become very intentional around that just so that we could bring you through a series of conversations, especially if you have questions that can lead into the next one. So, yeah.
Beautiful. So thank you for paying attention. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Um, Thank you for participating in our YouTube channel. If you like what you see, then subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it around to other people who you think might also like what we're doing here, with the conversations that we're having. And of course, leave us a comment. Let us know what it is that you think of our topic, and or any other topics you want to talk about or want us to talk about, or leave any kind of a discussion that you think is relevant to what we're doing here. And I thank you for participating, and I thank you, Leslie, for helping me create this wonderful conversation. I love our conversations. They're a reflection of our friendship, that is for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Yeah, I agree. So, yeah. So, on that note, everyone, thank you so much. We will be back here next Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, and we will get that up and posted. So, if you don't want to miss out, as Andy had said, like and subscribe to the channel so that you get notified when we're going to go live next. I hope you have a great rest of your Friday, a fabulous weekend, a great week, and we'll see you next Friday. Bye for now.
See you next week. Bye-bye.